Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. A warm welcome to you all to this joint session, wherever you are and which time of day it is. As you can see in the concept note, the session is co-organized by FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FIG, the International Federation of Surveyors, UNECE, the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, UNSD, UNGGIM, the United Nations Statistics Division Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, and the World Bank Group. The title of the session is The Role of the Geospatial Information in Responding to Crises and Accelerating the Progress on Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. FIG, the International Federation of Surveyors, has a close cooperation with United Nations relevant bodies, World Bank and its sister associations. FIG has been globally recognized as an international non-governmental organization on geospatial information and the management of land, the sea, and built environment. We are proud to host this event on a burning topic in cooperation with our partners. Today, we have a number of highly recognized international speakers with us. They will share their views through high-profile presentations with follow-up discussion. My name is Hartmut Müller. I'm chair of FIG Commission on Spatial Information Management, and I also represent the Advisory Committee of Commission Officers to the Council of FIG. I will be co-chairing this session together with Rumjana Tonchowska. Rumjana is a Senior Land Administration IT Officer at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. Kate Fairley will be the rapporteur for this session. Kate works for Land Equity International, and she is a past chair of the FIG Young Surveyors Network, FIG's youth organization. Disasters, whether a flood, hurricane, earthquake, or wildfire, occur in space and time. And a public health disaster like COVID-19 is no exception. Unlike other disasters, however, the impact of COVID-19 quickly became a global event. A virus does not recognize borders and travels along with people. International flights and therefore high mobility of knowingly or unknowingly infected people helped the virus spread across continents in short periods of time. Urgent questions quickly came up, such as which cities or towns should be under lockdown, where are infection, hospitalization, mortality rates exponentially increasing, where is it safe to reopen businesses, restaurants, and where? Questions that have had to and must be answered with high priority and without delay. In which ways can geospatial information now help answer such questions and many others, and promote better and faster responses to a crisis such as the current pandemic? This is the one important topic of this session. The second thought-provoking topic is, can, and if so, how can geospatial information help accelerate progress on achieving the SDGs? Let me quote the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Even before the pandemic, the world was off track to fulfill the SDGs. COVID-19 is having a devastating impact on all 17 goals and threatening the achievements already made in many areas. Investment in data is urgently needed to respond to the crisis and support SDG acceleration. So, trusted data in general is an enormously important prerequisite for achieving the SDGs, and high quality geospatial data even more so, perhaps even more so. And with that, I conclude my opening remarks. I look very much forward to an inspiring session that will answer many questions. And hand over to Rumiana, who will now lead us through the next part of the session. Over to you, Rumiana.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. I don't know who is where, but I think we have guests from several continents. So wherever you are, I hope you'll find the session useful. We have many things to share. This session is very informative. We have several very new studies and new papers which will be presented, and also various practical experiences. So I hope it will be more connecting people and explore what is available, and you all can benefit more from the new studies and also know the speakers and know where you can find them. So our first speaker is Greg Scott. Many of you know him very well. Greg is based in the United Nations Statistic Division in New York. In his role as Secretariat of UNGGM, he has been providing strategic advices and the leadership and guided the development, coordination, and implementation of substantive global geospatial program since 2012. And thanks, Greg, to your efforts and to the team of World Bank and UNGGM and all geospatial experts who contributed for integrated geospatial framework development, which was adapted right on the time, 2018. So now we get many fruits out of this, and it's a good framework for many new studies. It will be mentioned in many studies today, which will be presented, and also from countries' experience. So Greg will present COVID-19, the white paper COVID-19 so-called, which has many practical experiences, sharing information from different countries and showing how geospatial information was helping to manage the COVID-19 crisis, but also raising questions and raising some issues, what's next and how we can do better to be prepared better. So Greg, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes. We have many presentations, so I would like each speaker to keep the time of the presentation to 10 minutes so we can have some questions at the end. Thank you, Greg, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Rumiana, and it's great to be with you all here today. To participate in this process. I'm hoping that you can see my presentation. Yes, I can see that. As Helmut mentioned in his introduction, we've seen the impact of COVID have a major and probably long-term effect on our global dimension when we think about our globalization, our global interconnectedness, and the fact that we do depend and interdepend on us as countries, on each other as countries. I'm going to talk a little bit today about a white paper, Ready to Respond, and it was a paper that was developed for the 10th session of UNGGM last year in August 2020. I won't go into it in detail. The web link is there, you can see it. But importantly, I wanted to just touch on some of the key issues around this white paper. And I wanted to start that by just using a quote by our co-chair of UNGGM as part of the high-level political forum process that's unfolding in the Economic and Social Council right at the moment. And there's just been a number of integration dialogues and talking about the pandemic and the fact that this pandemic has not only reinforced our vulnerabilities across countries, but it's also recognised the need for timely and reliable data, especially geospatial information. And that whilst we have many, many challenges, particularly in the developing world, things are changing. The COVID-19 pandemic, whilst a major global disaster, has enabled considerable transformation in the digital world that we probably did not see accelerating as fast as it has. And so that's helped us in bridging this digital divide. Just by way of what this paper was about, it was really about addressing a problem that was emerging. And this was the 3rd of April. We had a first discussion amongst some of our colleagues in UNGGM. is could we think about what COVID-19 may bring to us? Now, let's think back April 2020. We're only 1 month into the global pandemic, but already we could see some of the pre-existing obstacles around not only what we saw from the SDGs around structural inequalities and the socioeconomic gaps and challenges, but the fact that we could see the ongoing geospatial problem arising, this inability to integrate timely fundamental data with new data sources, being able to integrate enabling technologies, and being able to integrate national capability. And when we think about this process and this response, and this is really what this particular paper was about. So to summarize, what we were asking ourselves was, could we, UNGGIM, the global geospatial community, could we or are we ready to respond to the global challenge with geospatial information? How do we do that? What does that look like? Is it well understood about geography? So that was really the essence on this paper, and the paper discusses all of this in detail along with case studies. Now, there's key takeaways this is my last slide with words. I'm not going to go into these key takeaways in detail, but I just wanted to mention point 1 and point 5 in particular, was that with COVID-19 and a number of seminars we convened, it highlighted a number of issues that have been persistent over decades around responding to disasters. Things around the governance arrangements that are in place, the leadership, institutional arrangements, what fundamental data is available, how coordinated is it? Are we able to share it, disseminate it, build upon it, add new sources of data, leverage technology? And this is one of the big messages that we learned in this process, was that we can have much data. We need to be able to combine it with new data sources, but we need to be able to make it available in enabling technologies, using dashboards and platforms and other mechanisms to share information that's interoperable and interconnected, standards-based, acknowledging data privacy, and at the same time building capacity and capability. But most important, communicating the right messages. That's really a key takeaway. And as I mentioned, all of those different aspects, as Rumjana mentioned, they are actually key elements of the 9 strategic pathways of the IGIF, the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework. So that provided a massive change in thinking around how countries address this global pandemic problem. Now, let me just look at a couple of images for you, and you will all be familiar with the Johns Hopkins University Global Dashboard. You know, right from day one, this has now had millions and millions and millions of hits. And this provided a global dashboard for us to understand what was happening where, and provided using technology from Esri. So for us, immediate was like, so that dashboard at a global level, could we implement it in a national level? And could we do this really quickly? And in fact, that's exactly what happened. Here you can see examples from Senegal, from Malaysia, Fiji, and also from Chile. And I've deliberately only using developing countries here. They very, very quickly staged up and geared up dashboards at a national level in their own ways, just using that technology, using a standard dashboard and scripts and mechanisms to do the same as what we saw at a global level. Importantly, if we just look at the Fiji example here, and this is coming back to fundamental data being integrated with new emerging sources of data, you can see here where we see existing data around villages and settlements and infrastructure and transport, administrative boundaries, land use, all of this data that we hold as geospatial experts, but then merging it with health data on facilities, quarantine locations, where we would look at isolation, clinics, medical areas, and all these sorts of things from the Ministry of Health. Also lockdown locations and contact tracing. So it's integration of data and integration of technology and building capability in and across government in a country. Further to that, we were seeing disaggregation of data. We were seeing that in some of these dashboards, and here we can see the Dominican Republic and Burkina Faso, that we're going down into geographic disaggregation and looking at more detail. Again, enabling information to be shared, to be communicated, and to be understood by the public. I want to just come back to the sharing. If we do make this data available and visible, it means we can do more with it. I'll just come back to the Chile example as a key exemplar. Here is the national dashboard. We go into that dashboard a bit more. We're suddenly seeing the types of data we in the geospatial community are familiar with, right down at a local level, at a community level, at a city level, all the different demographics and dimensions of the impact at that level. That was so impactful in Chile that it became a key communications mechanism on the nightly news in Chile. And here is a screen grab, I think from the second night on the 9:30 news on communicating information by location. Keywords, information by location. And that was incredibly powerful. But it doesn't stop there. We can take that same data and aggregate it out to a continent level or a regional level, as we can see here by UNECA in Africa. And that can also go out into a global level. And so here we have the dashboard of the system of systems, where all these different systems have been joined in together. And hopefully what I'm able to do now, we're going into a website, and this is Esri's website, and we can go into countries. And if I just come into here, into Chile, what it does, and we could do this for all countries, we go into the dashboard. And so this particular system of systems approach in live detail connects all of these dashboards around the world. And at the same time, you can actually go to that national dashboard, and we can look at these across different countries. You can find a country, you can list a country. But the point is, it's about sharing open, integratable data being made available to actually help us make decisions and to enable us to have a much better understanding of what's going on. So with that, I'll conclude and look forward to the rest of the session coming up today. Thank you so much, Rumiana.
To read, we were using it already in several countries when it appeared, so it's, you just double check and you get some ideas, so you pick up what is there. So thank you very much, very informative, and the whole white paper is available in your presentation, and it's also in the concept note included, which is downloadable from the program. So our next speaker is Catherine Keown. She'll present our joint presentation from FAO and World Bank. Catherine is a land lawyer. I'm very proud that the lawyers like Catherine work a lot on technology and support the geospatial. Catherine is the key initiator of all this integrated geospatial framework, fighting all the time that this is so important and how countries can benefit. So the presentation is focused on country level support and linking to the financing mechanisms and how countries can benefit from everything what was developed and how they can build up further on that. So Catherine, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Rumiana, and greetings everyone across the globe. While the presentation is coming up on screen, Kate or Amy, could you please bring it up? I just want to mention that land, of course, as we know, and our audience and with FIG, land is the most important asset for the poor and for the bottom 40%. And the COVID-19 has really brought to the forefront the importance of digital services, being able to provide land information remotely, provide land information services. So it is a key aspect in the recovery process of COVID-19. Sorry. Oh, here we go. Okay, next, please. And so the role of geospatial information, and particularly land information, is really being recognized now by governments as part of e-government programs or digital development transformation programs, where land comes out as one of the key registers. And if we look at what the world is facing and the challenges, and because I cover the East Asia Pacific region, I'm just going to use that as an example, where globally and within regions, the population growth is increasing. And that leads to this massive urbanization and this migration from the rural to urban areas. That leads to needs for new housing units, for renewable energy, to ensure that forests and other natural resources are not adversely impacted. And of course, on the bottom row, there's all these implications with climate change and sea level rise, the natural disasters, and all of that is leading to poverty and the impact that COVID-19 has had on poverty. We see increases and some reversals of the trends we have seen recently. So geospatial information and land administration data and the platforms are foundations for this digital transformation and for rethinking the way governments can approach the post-COVID-19 recovery. Next. We've already introduced the idea of the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, which was adopted in 2018, and last year the implementation guide was adopted, and tomorrow Greg and the co-chairs, there will be a special session on the IGIF, and you can see in that puzzle box are the 9 strategic pathways. And using that as a guide, FAO, Rumiana, and the World Bank team, we worked on a methodology that countries could use, international partners could use on how to implement the IGIF at the country level. We've come up with a series of tools and templates. With a rapid diagnostic, we prepare an action and investment plan that includes a business case, and then looking at implementation. And the key aspect with implementation is financing. So I'll talk a bit about how we focus on getting financing out to implement these action plans. Next, please. So with the tools and templates available, and with the IGIF as the key strategic framework, there's already a lot of partnerships being developed and international partners going in and working with countries using the IGIF as a framework, different methodologies, different approaches. But the key point is that the IGIF provides a framework to work with countries in a consistent and holistic way. And you can see here a lot of the partnerships that are already being developed and leading to some of the technical assistance, the capacity building support, and the financing of geospatial information development and the infrastructure needed. Next, please. So one example from Mongolia and how the work has led to financing of geospatial information management and the government of Mongolia's geo-driven e-government strategy and vision. And part of the methodology is looking at the socioeconomic analysis and actually trying to get a solid return on investment that the Ministry of Finance, the World Bank, other budget holders can understand the importance of the investment. It's just as important as building roads and building energy plants, especially in this COVID world. Digital information and transformation is important. So working together, both UNGGIM and the World Bank worked with Mongolia, led to a very solid action plan, investment plan, a very clear return on investment. And that is now leading to financing through the new World Bank Digital Development Project. So we now see the complete cycle of working with countries, preparing the action and investment plan, and actually having that investment financed. Next, please. Another example is the Norwegian Mapping Agency is working in 4 countries using the methodology and the templates. So these templates are available for use. And then linking that action and investment plan either to existing projects. So in Georgia and Moldova, there are already existing land administration projects where funding can be sought. And also just exploring links for other countries. But there's a solid plan, a return on investment, and being able to communicate with decision makers and the economists and the ministries of finance that make financing decisions. The action and investment plan is really a solid document to bridge that link between our technical, geospatial, or land people and the economists and the financiers. Next, please. And the beauty of the IGIF and developing the action plans is it is not donor specific. It is not only for one particular use, that in fact, it allows also a platform for better donor coordination, and particularly for the government or the client to approach the various partners and logically and sequentially ensure that investments are being made. And here you can see the example from Moldova, where there are multiple partners. And using, if you see numbers 1 through 9, those are the strategic pathways of the IGIF. And going through this process, who can contribute to what of those strategic pathways and the action plan and the investments that are needed. So it really does provide a platform for engagement with the country and also with all of the partners. Next, please. And the methodology also works at the subnational level. It is just as important for municipalities or provinces to be able to look at their geospatial information, their digital information, what is needed. And the methodology works both nationally and subnationally. The sectors may change, the use cases may vary, but it's flexible, and it allows, through this alignment to the policy drivers or the business drivers, really allows the client, whether it's the municipality or the national government, to say what are their most important challenges, what are the sectors that lead the economic and social development of the country, what are the use cases that are most pressing, and then finally, what are the action and investments. And I can say in every single action plan, or every single country we've worked with to date, land and land information, the cadastral layer, always comes out as being extremely important and an area where significant amount of capital investment is needed. So the green box at the bottom so far has come out as one of the priorities in every country we've worked with thus far. Next, please. Of course, there's key issues, lack of understanding, data quality and completeness. That's where the massive amount of capital investment is needed, is around the data itself. Capacity issues, data sharing issues, lack of financing. But of course, the IGIF provides the framework to understand all of the issues, to prioritize them, and to understand the interlinkages. Next, please. And looking at the data strategic pathway and the 14 fundamental data themes that are contained therein, most of them are maintained by the cadastre and mapping authorities. So it's important to engage with these authorities and understand what are the critical investment needs, the policy and legal issues, capacity, the people issues. Next, please. And so what do we face when we go in and we work with the mapping agencies? You can see what is the state of play of maps, just needing to digitize them. And looking at the state of them now requires a lot of time and investment just to get to the digital stage. Next, please. And even if there are digital data, you can see sometimes that digital data is incorrect. And that can be even worse. So you can see in the red polygons, the digital, those buildings are not even in the building register. Or if you look at the maps, the rural maps, the agricultural land from Albania, the official map does not actually reflect the parcel shape, the size, or the ownership. So a lot of technical assistance and policy legal changes, and particularly data improvement and upgrading is needed. Next, please. The same as with legal documents and records and archive. Even the most meticulously maintained legal paper archive still limits integration of data, interoperability, provision of citizen services. So a lot of funding needs to go in just into basic digitization of archives. Next, please. And that's where the World Bank and FAO cooperative program come together to combine financing and technical assistance. And the current investment portfolio is over $2 billion. And that more than 60% is for this data digitization, ICT systems, data integration, and increasingly leading to the national spatial data infrastructure development. Next, please. And it's very holistic, approaching what are the needs and what are the investments, from policy and legal to the systems themselves, to the data quality improvement, all of the various registers, and also the capacity development that are needed. Next. And my final slide will focus on capacity development. It is very important. And so the World Bank, through our Open Learning Campus, we now have available an e-learning. It's a self-paced online course. It is available through our website. You can see the link there to OLC. We did offer a 4-week facilitated course in February and March. More than 300 participants from more than 40 countries, and everyone can go back now and use this e-learning module at their own pace. And we also held a virtual knowledge exchange, bringing together practical, concrete examples of how to implement the IGIF, how to address and develop an action and investment plan, and the final point is an invitation. Because of demand and how well it was received, that we will have a new event and a new series in October. So I do invite you to join that. You can contact Rumiana or myself to get further information and the link. And with that, I will end. Thank you very much.
Very much. Our next speaker is Christine Walter, and she's from Ordnance Survey. She's a geospatial professional with long experience in strategy and policy area. Christine will present the UNGGIM, the new trends in geospatial information management, which is the 3rd edition of this document. We love the first one, we love the second, and now she will present the 3rd one. She was leading the development of the 3rd one. So Christine, the floor is yours. Christine was also an author of the Smart City Strategic Growth Map, which was developed under the EU Commission Horizon 2020. So those who are interested can have a look at that one as well. So Christine, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rana. I hope you can hear me. So if you are able to share the slides. Oh, here we go. Perfect. Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do over the next 10 minutes is very much introduce you to the Future Trends Report in case you have not come across it over the last couple of years, but then also very much go into more detail about the findings of this first edition. The third edition that was published around September last year, and then really finish it off really almost discussing what impact has COVID-19 had on the future trends that we've identified and that we've worked on. So if we can move to the second slide, maybe one. Oh, yes, thank you. So first of all, before I really start talking about the Future Trends Report, it's very much about setting the scene. Here's a very well-known quote by Bill Gates, and we always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years, and we underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10 years. However, as we've been sort of working through the Future Trends Report, one of the key trends that we've identified is actually that over the last decade, probably the last 2 decades, this trend has somewhat changed. We happen to almost overestimate the change that will occur in the next 10, and we somewhat underestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years. And hopefully this presentation will go into more detail. So why is it important for us to understand the trends that are happening in the geospatial world? And that's very much connected to everything happens somewhere and the global development and the sustainable development goals, of course. If we're thinking about the next 2, even next 3 decades, there are a number of different challenges that the world will occur. So for example, expanding urbanization, it's predicted that by 2050, urbanization will have tripled from what we're seeing happening today. And of course, this has a multitude of other challenges that will come alongside around food production, around climate change issues, and then of course, the need for sustainable land development. But also there are a number of other challenges that we've really seen over the last 15 months is that globalization also amplifies the structural threats that amplifies the threats of climate change and, of course, infectious diseases. And what's at the heart of enabling us to be prepared for these challenges that are ahead of us is geospatial. So, and that's what I'm going to look at and then over the next couple of minutes. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Future Trends Report, it is a mid to long-term report that has input from a variety of different experts from throughout the UNGIM network. And this time when we reviewed the report, we've had input from, I think, 124 organizations, countries, and individual experts who helped us understand how trends are accelerating and how they are changing. And something that's very special about the report is that it doesn't just look at the market, it doesn't just look at data, it doesn't just look at technology, but it really looks at the legal and the policy environment, as well as the impact that it will have on skills and training, and what the role of the non-governmental sector is, as well as the role of government. So if I had to describe it in one sentence, I would say that the Future Trends Report is a strategic insight report. It provides an understanding of the mid to long-term developments in geospatial information management. And as I've already said, it looks at technological as well as non-technological trends, but it also signposts opportunities for organizations to advance their geospatial maturity in order to really keep or develop at pace with this change that we're seeing today. So again, one of the key challenges, of course, is this rate of change that is almost unprecedented to what we've seen 2 decades ago. So what we've come across is that this increase in the adoption of data-centric technologies rather than traditional IT technologies that handle data, or the evolution of user demands and requirements, and the significance of partnerships and collaborations between governments with private and the academic corners of the industry are crucially important. So as we've gone through the analysis, we've really started to see not just trends emerge, but also drivers, which help us really structure the information and the insight that we have gained. And the next slide will really almost highlight those 5 pillars that we have identified. And I'm sure it won't come as any surprise that new sources of data or data analytical methods, as well as the technological advances, are very much providing the greatest amount of opportunities. So over the next few minutes, I'm trying to almost walk through from a very high level perspective for each of these different pillars. So if we look at the very first one, with the rise of new data sources and analytical methods, of course, with data everywhere, the demand for analytical ready data that reveals immediate insights is increasing beyond that of traditional geospatial data sets for visualization and analysis. As well as the concept of big data analytics, there has really been a constant theme ever since the report was first published in 2013 and then reviewed for a second time in 2015 and 2016. So this volume, the size, the speed, the diversity, and the complexity with which geospatial data is generated have already led to changes in organizations and businesses across the world. And this change has taken place both in the infrastructure and the processes used to collect, to store, to analyze, and to use data, as well as the skills and the expertise of the workforce. Cloud-based processing and access to sources of new and rich data is already giving rise to new applications and, of course, opportunities within this space. Then the second pillar, the technological advances. Again, I'm sure many of these won't come as a surprise, but some of the broadest and most powerful new geospatial trends continue to be associated with mainstream advances in technology. And these advances in technology often very much refer to automation, to artificial intelligence, sensor technology, and the Internet of Things. They have created a real shift towards a machine-centric world. Those continuous developments in technology are also calling for an accelerated amount of training in the future skills that will be needed in order to keep up with the technological capability, whilst staying mindful of new questions that are arising around data privacy, cybersecurity, and data ethics, of course. So if we're then looking at the third pillar, the industry structural shift, and this shift will impact the way of work in which we work together, and necessitating greater collaboration amongst data providers and data users. And one example is the rise of smartphones and other mobile devices has very much increased the expectations of many users around the demand for higher accuracy, for currency, and detail. So organizations will need to adapt their offerings in that regard. And one of probably the key markets where we see this demand change is mobility data, which is very much predicted to be the fastest growing market in the future. If we're then moving on looking at user requirements, our analysis identified a notable shift in the requirements of users. So if we're looking at a citizen level, this can be seen through a growing number of location-based services such as transport or retail, and then this expectation of mobile, frictionless, and convenient access to data. It increases the demand and the opportunity for near real-time data generation and analytics. However, at a city level as well, and that very much refers to some of the trends highlighted in the technological developments, are the developments in digital twins with associated citizen services, is allowing local municipalities to simulate scenarios related to climate change in particular and flooding events, while mitigating risks and increasing infrastructure resilience. And then if we're moving on to the final pillar around policy and legal, and quite often, as is the case, that technology really develops at a pace that outpaces the legal and the policy frameworks that are supporting it. So this places even more emphasis on security, on data privacy and ethics, trust and licensing requirements that need to be developed at pace. And of course, there will be a greater demand for governments and commercial organizations to consider these emerging and legal challenges as part of their national frameworks for data and digital progression. So again, as you can read here on the slide as well, but quite often, and probably that's one of the biggest takeaways that we found, is we can't just look at these trends in isolation. We really need to see them working together, and the biggest opportunities are arising the more these innovations come together, and of course they're impacting each other as well. So if we're then really moving on to the final slide. So we've very much adapted the another visual that we have within the report, which is this impact predictability matrix, where we were asking ourselves earlier this year, what has the impact been of COVID-19 ever since we first started reviewing the Future Trends report around the, now I need to remember, around the beginning of 2019, which was of course a very different world. So as we've been reviewing the last 15 months, we can really say that COVID-19 has accelerated the application of many of the trends that the report has identified and that we could have previously not imagined. So in the post-COVID-19 world, what does this mean? So we're almost predicting to a certain extent that the likely number of trends will accelerate even more and to an even higher status than what we had initially predicted here with our high impact and high predictability matrix. So the pandemic has very much underlined how geospatial infrastructures have become an essential component of disease prediction, prevention, and responses. And of course, we've already heard Greg talking about this. So I'm going to just call out a small number of trends that really have probably the greatest impact on the findings of the Future Trends report, which range from analysis of spatial data to trace people's movements, to using contextualized data, digital maps and technologies to predict behavior, and from visualizations that make data more easily accessible to machine learning techniques using aerial and satellite data. And all of these techniques support the assessment of how environmental changes may impact infectious disease transmissions. So this is very much almost an overview of the Future Trends report, a very high-level overview. So I would very much encourage you, if you have the chance, to look at the report itself. There is a very easy first chapter, which very much provides the overview of what I've just been talking about, and then individual chapters that go into much more detail around trends in artificial intelligence, digital trends, but also the policy and legal challenges that we've touched on very briefly. So thank you very much for your time.
Some insights a little bit to raise interest, because all these studies are available and people can use it and they're very useful, so they can know you, they can contact you, they can contact Greg and UNGGM. It's on their website, I suppose, so it's like we share the links as well. So thank you very much. If we have questions, I keep the time for questions at the end. So thank you very much and stay online with us. So we continue with the next presentation, which is from Serbia. Darko Vucetic is going to present the experience of Serbia in using geospatial information management. And because Serbia is the only country in this session which is included, so it's a very informative session with a lot of studies. But I want just to mention why I decided to invite Serbia, because the bank and FAO are supporting Serbia for more than a decade, and especially the Republic Geodetic Authority. They did a lot, they achieved a lot, but especially in geospatial and in technology use, they make a big jump, like from very old systems based on old technologies which cannot be handled easy with the new PCs and servers. They went very fast in the last 4 years, thanks to the political will for the good management of the director, who I suppose is here, and finding smart people who are enthusiastic and motivated to work in the government for making the world better. So Serbia made a lot in the last 4 years, and they give a hope for countries which are just starting. They can learn from them to say, okay, if they achieve in 3 years or 4 years this, maybe we can do the same. There was a case when FAO was supporting a project in Guyana, and we brought them in Europe, and we sent them to Ordnance Survey. We sent them to Netherlands and Serbia and some other countries. When they came in FAO to say what they learned, they were talking all about Serbia. I said, what about the others? They said, Serbia give us a hope because they achieve in 3 years. We think we can do something in 3 years as well. Otherwise, the others are too far, too developed. They cannot see themselves soon in these shoes. So we decided to bring Serbia to share their experience and to show what was possible to be done in 4 years' time. So Darko, the floor is yours. Darko is has a Master of Science on Geoinformatics. He's head of the Center of Excellence, which was also one idea which just came, and then they went to see several countries, Netherlands and others, to see how they organize. And they decided to start with small step because they didn't have much in 4 years' time, but now they become very famous. So he'll tell us the story, how they did it, what they do, and what are their next plans. Darko, the floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rumiana, and good afternoon, everybody. I would just add to Rumiana's, speech that okay, yes, it was very, big political will and support, and also very good management. We were lucky to have all colleagues, but also it was very important for us that we were lucky to meet good people, internationally, like Rumiana, like Catherine, like everybody else who helped us to deliver this transformation and reform of the whole institution and help the economy and our government of Serbia. So please, can I share the screen, please? So it's blinking, yeah. Sorry. Can you do it again? Okay. So I will do that. It's very hard for me to explain, all the things that we've done in the last 4 years in 10 minutes, but I will try in just through very practical examples how geospatial information and innovation can lead to benefits to the country and the citizens, at least in Serbia. And I will present the existing geospatial platform, but also supporting legal framework, organizational setup, and so on. And that was the crucial at the time when starts the COVID pandemic, in order for better reaction and so on. I would also add to Christine that COVID really accelerated the digitalization, but also helped the citizens and the users to accept this digitalization faster and easier. So my institution is in charge for many things, from NSDI to even aeronomy and geomagnetism. And from 14 fundamental data sets, we are in charge for 11. So it's a big potential, but also extremely big responsibility for the government. And thanks to NSDI and land administration development during the last 3 years, and especially supported by the World Bank and FAO, we managed to respond quickly to the growing need of information and from the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic. But that was not the case in the past. I started to work in FGA from 2019, and believe me, every single meeting until 2016 where I participated, and most of them are linked with some international infrastructure project, started with issue on the problem with availability and quality of the geospatial data, cadastral data, simply blocking the whole system. And most annoying thing for me, it was that fact that I did not have answer. Why? For example, Catherine already mentioned that in 2016, for example, the half of population in Serbia were lived in a street without proper address, and also over 4.5 million buildings were not registered in the real estate cadastre. So this preventing development of e-government, efficient urban and spatial planning, and leaded to the wrong decision. For example, for illegal buildings. We tried 5 times, 5 attempts to solve this issue, but all the issue fails beside other reasons because the information were wrong. We did not have exact number of these illegal buildings. And legal framework was completely analog. And here is example of the business processes. I know this most of you know, but this is really crucial to identify the issues with the data and information. And these are business processes of single applied to a cadastre office for citizens, private companies, and public. Every single line is based on law or by law. And there are 41 different laws defining determinations of the rights, with many exceptions, and 10 more for registration, archiving, dissemination of the data. So this situation can't be digitized. There is no technical solution for this. So this reflected negatively on the land administration system itself. So what we did, the role of institution like Republic Geodetic Authority has been considerably changed in 21st century. And our main goal is that RGA will no longer be a traditional register of the properties and now serves as a national platform for sharing geospatial data. We conducted new strategy and in 2016, and the strategy defines the priority of the actions needed to the legal framework, the need to redesign and streamline the business processes in order to improve efficiency, accountability, transparency, and access to the information. And we managed to, our driving star was also integrated geospatial information framework. We conducted many diagnostic tools, also social economic, which I'll study, etc., etc. And we changed many policies, laws, procedures, introduced new technology, and this spaghetti, from 2016 business processes, looks very simplified, and you can have start and end. It can be digitized. Thanks to these new simplified business processes, allow us to establish the new electronic front desk, for example, which speeded up transaction and reduced contacts between parties and governmental bodies. On this way, the time for processing the property transaction in Cadastre can be reduced from 49 to 4 working days. It's dramatically changed. And to achieve these, laws and bylaws were amended, thousands of civil servants were trained while software and equipment was installed. And that was the crucial for COVID as well. Beside this e-front desk, we make the good connection and electronic services with more than 250 institutions. And we saved on that way, it's estimated that in 1.5 years, we saved for our citizens 6 million hours in queue, for waiting. We were very known in Serbia with the big queues in the front desk, physical front desk in Serbia. It's not the case anymore. So also the game changing here, it was also introduction of the new geospatial platform. Now geospatial platform have more than 330 data sets with more than 50 million requests per month and participating in more than 200 institutions. And that was very popular, becoming very popular. And we extended our services to the professional users for mobile application, for crowdsourcing, etc., etc. And the citizens and the private sector can easily access the data, can combine the data between among each other and so on, and to have some additional information that they didn't have access or no clue that there exists in Serbia at all. So we also introduced new technologies for crowdsourcing and collaborative work. So these functionalities for mobile application and desktop was very crucial to update the existing data, but also to collect the new one. And on this way, combination with the geospatial platform and crowdsourcing functionality, we managed to update the whole address register in 2 years. So what's the result during the COVID time? When in 2020, when the COVID pandemic started, the government of the Republic of Serbia established 2 groups to manage, coordinate, and support the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. One group dealing with the health and social issue, and the second group was dealing with the economic issue. And the use of geospatial information and services assisted in making better and more informative decisions to monitor the fast-changing situation and decide what measures to be put in place and where most support is needed. The integration of the geospatial platform was done with the basic statistical data, for example, the whole transport network, railways, roads, water, and others, as well with the complete network of the health and education system. So the regular services have been redesigned and to enable citizens and economy to mitigate damage and conduct safer day-to-day activities during the peak of the COVID-19 crisis. Electronic communication related to the Cadastre transaction were fully digitized, adjusted, and implemented with the prompt legislative amendments. At the beginning, it was a little bit issue because nobody from the citizen side nobody actually knew that we are working, but after the communication with the citizens through TV, they adopted very fast this online communication. And what is also very important is that we were able, with good organization, to provide to the market and the government very detailed weekly reports on the real estate market condition based on price register, etc., and help them to guide some measures to minimize the effect on the real estate market. And that real estate market in Serbia during the pandemic suffered only marginally, with good prospect to increase in volume compared in 2019, which was the best year in the history of the real estate market in Serbia. In the end, 2020 was for some indicators better year than 2019. And that was the sign for us, for my institution, that our reform and our digitalization were actually successful, and we are on the right track. Regarding the geospatial data, additional functionalities and the tools of the geospatial platform have been developed and to respond to the new demand. One of the key tools for spatial temporal analytics and visualization tool, and we managed to provide tools to collect the new data very fast, like COVID ambulance, medical institution infrastructure, nursing homes, social welfare, and so on. And it was very, very, useful and very, of course, address register, building register were crucial at that time as well. And we identify the new services that can be, provided to the government in better reaction and for better information system for this disaster risk management and reaction. When the COVID outbreak, started, law on disaster risk reduction and emergency management requires established the disaster risk register system for purpose of risk assessment, risk prevention, and intervention. And this is really a strategic decision of the government of Serbia and Republic Geodetic Authority. It's actually subsystem of the GeoSerbia, of the whole national spatial data infrastructure. And we are working, my institution is working with the Ministry of Internal to deliver that for many other disasters, so not only for pandemic, but also for landslides, for firefighters, and so on and so on. And that is very crucial information system in the years to come. And what are the benefits? Social economic benefit study, which was conducted with World Bank, finished in 2021, showed that benefit ratio for geospatial data is 1 to 5. It's extremely huge potential. And what is the most important for my institution, for myself, is that citizens are also very satisfied with the new services. And for example, as you can see in Alexa, website, the site of my institution is in top 17, the top sites in Serbia. We conducted several, the director of the RGA became the reformer of the year in 2019. And the citizens said that trust in the institution in Serbia, they put RGA in the 4th place. So it was very crucial for us and goodwill for further development. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward for the question and discussion. Thank you.
The person who is famous with getting any new ideas. He is not afraid to try new things, and he got full support from the director. So any new study, before it's published, they're already using it, like the next one, which is coming. So thanks, Darko. The next speaker is Crises. I think she's well known by maybe all participants. She is an honorary FIG president, professor at the School of Rural Surveying and Geoinformatics Engineering in the National Technical University of Athens in Greece. And she's expert in cadastre and property evaluation and spatial information management. Crises has a long history. She has 270 papers already published. She is elected bureau member of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, and she is very active in informal settlements, specifically her painful in Greece, which, Chrissy, I want to see how Greece will resolve the informal settlements with all your knowledge and support. So Chrissy is going to present the UNEC study, which is called COVID-19 Recovery Action Plan for Informal Settlements in UNEC region. So Chrissy, the floor is yours. We are a little bit late, so please keep 10 minutes for the presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rumiana. Thank you, everybody. And in this session, big thanks to FIG Council and to the organizers for giving us the chance to bring the FIG family together again and to realize how big progress has been achieved in our profession during the pandemic. Maybe Ami, have you? Okay. Thank you. I'm going to present you the recovery action plan of COVID-19 recovery action plan for informal settlements in the UNEC region, which has just passed the first step of endorsement at the 12th session of the Working Party on Land Administration in June. And the second and final endorsement will be made in October this year by the 82nd session of the Committee on Urban Development and Housing and Land Management. So I'm very happy to be the presenter, to give you an introduction of this study, which is a collaborative work, the product of what we have done, a great number of experts during the 2020 and the beginning of 2021. So when we started working on that, the coronavirus was actually a test, and sadly, even the world's supposedly most advanced nations had too visibly failed in dealing with the pandemic very fast and very quickly, because a global and even a regional action plan was still missing. So luckily, experience was already there in the UNEC Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Land Management through the WPLA, that we have all realized the importance, and especially governments, the importance of the availability of reliable and affordable geospatial and demographic data in a timely manner. And also we have already reached the stage of research that we have identified the impact and the size of informal development in the region and the causes, and already we had some formalization projects going on. So we now had to address the question who, and at the same time, more importantly, where are the most vulnerable, those exposed most to the pandemic, and how to act efficiently and in a timely manner. So we have also realized that measures taken by governments to empower people against the pandemic are related very much to good management of land, and therefore there is a need for more localized, evidence-based and fit-for-purpose solutions. So we acted through this, next slide please, through this framework. And of course, we had to take into consideration some facts. For example, that very few countries had already reported at the beginning of the 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, significant progress within the 5 years of implementation of SDGs. And unfortunately, many of these projects already face significant additional delays due to the COVID-19 situation. So we had the existing challenge to meet the SDGs in time, and also we have the new challenges to address that are introduced during the COVID-19. So it was estimated that 1.6 million workers in the formal or informal economy are at risk of losing their livelihoods due to the COVID-19, and it was anticipated that it will be a creation of new poor, which will soon join those most vulnerable. Also, we have to take into consideration that unlike other natural disasters that are more or less localized, COVID-19 is or may exist everywhere, and this requires holistic solutions. And this is really important that the governments have recognized that, and I am glad that humanity is at this stage. But at the moment, we have also realized that at the same time, COVID-19 has a higher and localized concentration among informal settlement residents, where people are marginalized, more or less, less prepared, of course, basic infrastructure are poor, and where there is a significant lack of reliable geo-referenced data and enabling technologies to measure and monitor what is happening, where, when, and how. So mainly what this recovery action plan was, it was to focus on SDG 11, but addressing all the other SDGs also for meeting the Sustainable Development Agenda goals. Next slide, please. Okay, so this recovery action plan aims to prevent the spread of the pandemic and to get us more prepared for a future pandemic, and also to build back better and achieve greater resilience in future. So it is targeted at national and local governments and other stakeholders within our region. As I said, it's a collaborative work with a great number of contributors and experts, and all the Nexus network experts and municipalities and all kinds of sister associations that we have been interviewed and managed to collaborate under tension and big hard work. It refers to the UNEC guidelines for formalization of informal constructions, which was published at the beginning of 2020, and also the separate prepared policy briefs covering a number of special topics, and the assessment reports for targeted cities, the municipality of Tirana, Bishkek, Podgorica, and Skopje as case studies. It relies upon principles discussed also within the FAO voluntary guidelines for responsible governance of tenure, and the UNEC policy framework for sustainable real estate markets, and other documents. And the format now of this document is built around 9 broad policy areas, and each policy area has a goal. And then we have several targets underneath the goal, and each target has specific actions to be taken by the governments so that they will meet the expected results. So actions relate to how we consume and actually extract natural resources, and also how we deal with the environment and how we will engage with nature. And the good thing, and I see it as a progress among the experts involved, all this great number of experts involved, is that we have, under the tension of the need to address the pandemic, we had a very positive approach, and we realized that we have somehow to prioritize the actions. So we used color coding also in this publication. For example, with red, we have marked actions that have a kind of emergency need to be addressed just right now, and with yellow, the short-term emergency-related actions, with green, intermediate term, blended resilience and emergency focused, and with blue, long-term goals for more resilience. So it is the first time that I can say that I see some kind of prioritization within the kind of all these number of SDGs that we have to address, and this is, I think, a step forward. Next slide, please. Okay, here are the 9 policy areas that we can see a little bit very fast, because we have a separate presentation and will be made by Steven Nystrom, and he will address these policy areas in more detail. Number 1, of course, is related with land rights and recognition of tenure and integration of informal construction and constructions and rights and residence into the official records in an inclusive manner. And also here it is emphasized also the value of formalization and provision of titles to people, so that especially during the difficult crisis period of the pandemic and the problems that they face, because we understand that these people, they don't have any permanent income usually, and what will be very important for them is to have a kind of access to credit, is the use of their houses as a collateral. Policy area 2 has to do with the involvement of local communities and local action, which is really important, how we will mobilize the various community groups, how we will engage residents, and how we will act very fast with local charities, NGOs, faith-based organizations and donors, how we will prepare campaigns in a right manner and all that. Policy area 3 deals with basic data needs, telecommunication and information technology, more or less how to provide mobile phone services to disseminate urgent information, to provide affordable internet, to enable access to education to children within informal settlements, etc. Policy area 4 deals with the improvement of physical infrastructure, water and sanitation and energy services. Again, it prioritizes a little bit the situation, how we can improve the road network, how we can enable access and to all houses and homes, and also how we can enable different modes of traveling and access to water and sanitation services, to more hygienic infrastructure, and of course also for future more climate resilient solutions and etc. Policy area 5 deals with social and infrastructure services, how we can provide better health services and emergency services to the population, and information and more health education, and also information about their safety and their financial stability. Policy area 6 deals about how we can balance the stay-at-home recommendations, which is especially difficult for residents of informal settlements, with culture and the variety of vulnerable groups there. Policy area 7, how to provide food and basic consumption and distribution. Number 8 also deals with environmental concerns, how we can improve
Could you please wrap up, because we have another presentation and there are less than 10 minutes.
Yes. Next slide, please. I think, yes, this is the last slide, and we have realized that there are a lot of cross-cutting themes within all these policy areas, which are listed here. It's the data collection and management, the communication and promotional plans, the participation plans, and the resource allocation, and the economic benefits and political awareness and gender equality. Next slide, please. For more information, you may join the TS 8.5 session, and I hope that a specific workshop will be organized. So thank you so much for giving us the chance for presenting this work.
Thank you, Chris. It's very interesting, but we really don't have time. And
thank you.
It's a geospatial session where
no problem. Thank you for giving.
Not a problem. I'm saying it's a very The beauty is that this is one practical case when geospatial information can help for faster resolving long-standing issues with informal construction. So the next speaker is Frederick Zetterquist. He has a Master of Science degree in land administration and more than 20 years of experience in land administration. And many of you all know him already for various events. And he is since 2017 a chair of UNEC Working Party for Land Administration. And he's a lecturer at the University of Gävle in Sweden, and is responsible for a 5-year Master of Science program in Geospatial Information Management, which was launched last year. So it's very important. New profession is needed and people with new skills. And we cry for data, but then I was in another keynote session when people were crying that there's too much data, and also the environment, the issue of so much data and systems which also bring to destroy the environment, and there should be new technologies for less energy consumption and other things. And also people want to see more ready data, like applications, how the COVID applications were done, so everybody can understand them, not to search too many things. So Frederick will speak about the new study, which is scenario study on future land administration in the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe region, but it could be important for other regions as well, and they can find some similarity or some differences and to benefit also from this. So Frederick, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rumiana. It's always critical to be the last one, but I try to be very short. So yes, I would like to present to you the future scenarios of land administration that we have developed in the Working Party for Land Administration together with a group of experts. And these scenarios are based on drivers of change, the megatrends and other specific drivers in the sector of land administration. And the purpose is to use the scenario planning as an instrument to explore the future. And consequently for shaping of visions and developing long-term strategies. So this scenario study is looking approximately 10 years ahead. Next, please. So yes, I mean the objective is so it is to understand the emerging developments that are shaping our future. And we want to use this study as a framework to explore the future and to facilitate national strategies, as I just mentioned. But maybe the most important is that this scenario study, we believe, is a very good dialogue tool that could be used continuously, elaborating and renewing the scenarios for the future. Of course, the future, it is changing, but we should have it as an instrument to identify common challenges and opportunities, and to share best practices for solutions and also risk mitigation measures, and to improve ourselves for the future disruptive changes, such as the pandemic that we are just undergoing. And we want to use this as an instrument for land authorities to stay relevant into the future. Next, please. So we used studied megatrends and also specific drivers as a basis for defining the scenarios. And we have a draft report which is available at our website, where we describe the scenarios in detail, where we also have, in addition to the scenarios, we also have guiding principles which we believe are important for land administration systems, more the technical systems, what has to be in place in 10 years' time. And there is also a draft assessment framework that can be used for in-country studies using the scenarios. So we just had a consultation on the 1st of June at our session there, and where we have we did an interactive survey of how different countries look upon the future, and I will visualize that for you in a moment. But as I said, the dialogue instrument, it is really the important thing of these scenarios. Next, please. So this is just to the megatrends that we scored the relative importance and anticipated impact of land administration using these megatrends. Next, please. and together with identifying specific drivers or aspects that we believe are very important in the land administration domain that will have an impact. I don't think I might not have time to go into details, so I think we take the next slide. What is also important to recognize is that the role of land authorities are widening. So we are part also not only in our core activities, but also we are part of developing, for example, smart cities or climate change initiatives. We have more complex RRR, rights, restrictions, and responsibilities of land. We are coming to 3D modeling and closing the gap with building information models and GIS. And we have the question of open data and so on. And of course, this has consequences also for the land authorities. They need more interaction, more complex decision making and new competencies and so on. Next, please. And then we have, there are specific constraints for each specific country, just to mention a few here. Next, please. And we also, of course, what is important is the data strategy. I mean, what about openness and data protection, that we should try to have fundamental data open and trusted rather than have it as a controlling. Next, please. So this was just the basis, and then we defined the scenario cross as follows: that the vertical axis is representing operations in land administration, and you see at the bottom we have the state taking the lead, or if you go upwards, we have the private at the top. So the question is where we have these operations, if it is state or private. On the horizontal axis, we have governance, and at the left, we have traditional or more centralized type of governance, where the state is setting the rules for land administration, and it is process-oriented rather than what we have to the right, more information-oriented, where we talk about platforms, whether they are government platforms or more distributed, including also the private sector. So if you take the next, please. So in this cross, then we have 4 defined scenarios. And the first one is if you take the lower left one, we have the conventional, which represents a centralized land administration, where functions, operations, services, and data are typically managed by the state. It is process-oriented, as I mentioned, the performance, and data is captured and updated in a controlled way, which results in authoritative data. And this type of organizing land administration can be described as quite robust. However, the scenario tends to have system solutions that is characterized by constraints on their ability to evolve and develop new capabilities and meet new expectations. There can also be redundancy of information because we have information stored in different silos. Yeah, we take the next, please. And when we go up, still, it is the state that is still governing the data and setting the rules for land administration. But here we have a scenario where the private actors are involved, and the idea is that this will benefit because they can contribute with capital, technology, and skills that can be leveraged to enhance the national land administration. So these are all very often in public-private partnership arrangements in long-term as a service agreement normally. Next, please. So then coming to the lower right, we have what we call the platform land administration, where we have what is often referred to government as a platform. There are several state bodies that can share their data among themselves, so there can be more integrated governmental data and products and services. this is also more information oriented, and sometimes this is also defined by a government cloud, and we have also the once only principle here, which means that the one that is the client just has to send in information once, and it can be used by all state bodies. Next, please. And then we have the most visionary scenario where we also include the private sector, and there is not regulated. It is rather the trust is rather within the system itself, and governance is aligned with distributed liabilities among those involved. It is highly automated and a multi-stakeholder land administration, where the private sector has a large stake, and where governance and operations is moving to an ecosystem of both technologies, platforms, and diverse set of stakeholders. And of course, this requires extensive cooperation and clear distribution of responsibilities among the stakeholders. The widened opportunities for the integration of data from multiple providers, including crowdsourced data combined with an open data policy, require a high degree of standardization and stringent policies on compliance with data privacy and data security regulations. And this scenario, it facilitates process and automation and transparency and enables a wide spectra of user applications. It also provides for a built-in evolutionary environment, which in a complex context could transform and adapt to new expectations and requirements over time. So we can say that this would have a potential to trigger digital engagement and efficiently leverage digital trust. So this was then presented in 1st of June, and we made an interactive survey. If you take the next slide, please. There was a question to the audience: where would you position land administration in your country today? And there were 24 respondents to this. And you can see where the average is indicated in number 1 there, and you can see the distribution among the respondents to which scenario they believe they belong to today. If you take the next slide, please. The next, yeah. Here we can see, because we made this survey in November 2019, just before the pandemic, and there was another set of audience. It was also an international conference, PCC conference. So the data is not totally comparable, but anyway, we can see a small shift to the right, which might be, well, it's not statistically secured, I would say, but anyway, it's kind of an indication. If you take the next slide, next, please. We had a question: where do you think land administration in your country will be positioned in 2030? So there we can see a clear trend that countries believe that they will be more a platform kind of setup, and still mostly with the state having the steering wheel. Next, please. We also asked them to say where they would like to be in 10 years' time, and you can see that the desire is among those respondents to be more up with engaging more the private sector. So I think, of course you can design scenarios in many different ways, but I think this is a good instrument really to have a dialogue. Where do we think we will be in the future? And then, of course, what actions do we need? Do we need to prepare things better or have new strategies? Next, please. We also asked them to score the relative readiness and efforts they need to have 5 aspects in place to ensure that the land administration arrangements stay relevant in 2030. And so the aspects was these 5: required competencies, leadership adapted to new environment, technology catch-up, collaboration with other actors, and legal adaptations. This is the mean values you see here of these 24 respondents. So it was actually quite distributed among these different. So, but anyway, you can see that they are approximately the same readiness and efforts needed if you take the average value. We have to analyze this more because we haven't got into the details yet. Next, please. So, and then, as I said, we also, in addition to the scenarios, we also have 25 guiding principles for it should be 2030 here, sorry. But I will not go through them. You can read them in the report. So I think we take the next slide. We also have a draft self-assessment framework, which is built on the IGIF and FELA principles. But this is also something that must be more elaborated. So the draft report still has to be finalized, and we have to work further on this one. Next, please. So, but we also asked whether there is an interest to continue with to use scenarios as an instrument for keeping up with the dialogue, and that could be in country or more global. So there is. It was obvious that there is a great interest to use this as an instrument for also in the future. So we are planning at the UNECE to continue this and to engage more the member states that are involved. And perhaps this could also be something that could be used more globally. Thank you. Next. Yeah, that was all. You can see the study report. There is a link there. And as Rumiana mentioned about the importance of education, we will actually have our next webinar on education in land administration and geospatial management on the 30th of October. So you are most welcome to join there. Thank you.
This study is coming very much on time because COVID pushed a lot on digitization because of the lockdown and other things. But like how agencies are prepared to keep this sustainable, and with the investments made by the World Bank with data digitization and new system, etc., like the cyber security, the sustainability, and the knowledge to keep these systems running, they're coming up front now because they become very, very critical for sustainability. And IGIF, the strategic pathway for financing, has sustainable business models. And those are very important also for the land administration, because we saw from Catherine's slide the 14 data teams, and Darko said 11 out of 14 are managed by, and their custodian agency of 11 out of the 14, which means that they have huge tasks like to maintain their data, to provide the common platform. The cadastre agencies are leading the NSDI implementation almost in every country, or they're the key coordinators. So they achieve something with data digitization, with IT systems, but new appetites are coming and new demands are coming, and they become more and more technological agencies. So what are the sustainable business models? Like in Serbia, they're running at the moment a study for sustainable business models, and your study will be very useful because they can pick up 1-2 options which fits more or less to what where they are and what they want to achieve. So it could be interesting to follow them. And also Moldova has budget for similar sustainable business models to see, and other countries. So I think it's a very good study, especially with the 24 principles and the options and the models. One country will be more on left down, the other, but like where they are and where they want to be. It's very useful study. So it comes everything together. So we are a little bit late. So I want to say thank you very much to all co-organizers and all presenters for your time and for very informative presentations. We will upload all the presentations on the FAG program website, and there are all the links to the studies. So now, like, I want to invite you to join, to use the link, Ask Me Anything, which Claudia again copied down. We copied several times. So you can meet the presenters and you can ask the questions which you put in the comments box. If there are any questions which are not answered, I see a lot of chats are going on. We'll pick up the questions, we'll send them to the presenters, and then we'll send to you. So you can have all the answers, and you have already the presenter, so you can ask personally. So anyone who has question and want to raise something, he can click the link, Ask Me Anything, and then we can continue there. So thank you very much to all of you. Very informative, very new studies, and like, I think they fit for every country, from every region, and they can be very useful. So we don't duplicate efforts, but we build and we use what is available. Thank you very much. And apologize for Chrissy, to interrupt you, Chrissy. It's a long story and a very useful study, which we start to use it in Serbia. It's already translated in Serbian before you make it officially final. Thank you very much.